Hello, intactivists. It's the end of the year and time to do some reflecting. First thing I would like to state, it's hard to grade yourself. Like if you ask anybody to judge how they're driving or how great they are at any kind of skill, they're going to, make it be higher than it should be most likely. And another thing is that some things are out of my control. Like I can't control others. So I'm going to try and focus on just pots though, but I will compare me to others. Also, I'm not going to do any fancy editing. I have no time this week, honestly. But let's break down the goals of pots and I'm going to give you all a grade of how well I think I did. Being the intactivist news, I'll give myself an A minus. I think we get all the intactivist news out there. Granted, the international intactivist news sometimes is a month or two late. But to be fair, there are over 200 intactivist groups, most of which are dead or barely alive. And the barely alive ones make a post once every 4 months. And it's typically not really news, but like circumcision bad. So I do think we do a really good job, one, saving all the intactivists a lot of time of having them scour the interwebs for intactivist news themselves, and also informing intactivists of what's going on with intactivism currently. I do, however, suck at pronouncing words and names in general, so that's kind of not great. Trust me, I've gotten lots of feedback on that. Also, we have delivered breaking news before, like when Ron Lau, during his interview, he told POTS fans first that he was planning on retiring from TLC Tugger, and when Sherry Saunders was doing a radio station about circumcision in Alabama, and much more. Another goal we had was to remain neutral and be your voice. I'm going to give this a B+. So I am going to put my thoughts into things based off the research that I find. I think that gives it some personality, but I also do run polls so people know how other intactivists feel, because I have been wrong before, I've missed information, so you guys have came through and supported me with new information, and I support you. That's how this works, right? Also, POTS delivers a lot of bad news, because intactivist groups, they love bragging and tooting their own horn about what they are doing with their amazing initiatives and how that if this ends up working, it's going to be fantastic. So a lot of POTS videos is us saying, hold up, let's check the facts here, or let's just have a conversation about this. Because all the intactivist groups I know only deliver good news and never deliver bad news, or they sugarcoat the bad news so heavily that it sounds like good news. So on the flip side of that is I try to balance out that optimism with a dose of pessimism, or some may call it reality. So a lot of POTS videos are negatively charged, and that's the reason why. And it's funny because the people who would say good things about intactivism, especially in the polls or interviews, who don't like POTS, they don't actually end up doing polls or interviews. So then what happens is it becomes more negative in the polls and have more negative interviews. So perhaps the happy-go-lucky intactivists are failing their movement in providing us both sides of the coin, or perhaps intactivists really are pessimistic towards their movement, and I can totally understand why. Asking your questions for interviews. A minus. We used to be really, really good at asking everybody, hey, what's your questions for this interview? I know for like 6 people this year, we didn't ask that, and that's because people just wouldn't know them, right? Because if you don't know the person, because they're like a regret mom or something, you don't know what to ask, right? And typically, most of the questions were the same, so we just kind of wrote down the same repeating questions and just asked them to everybody. Or we just wouldn't have the time to get out the question in time. Like if somebody was debating on doing an interview with us for 3 weeks and then decides, okay, I want to do it in 2 days, then they want to talk to us and ask some more questions, and the first day is practically over now. Well, one, we don't want to get your hopes up because we have been canceled on at least 7 times this year, at least. And second, once we get around to posting who it is on the Discord, you may have 14 hours left to ask a question. And oftentimes that's before we go to bed. We also have to research the person ourselves a little bit. Also, we've had an issue with somebody supposedly messaging our interviewees, telling them not to do interviews with POTS. He's bad or whatever. But whatever questions you guys did end up asking, we asked them. in the interview for sure, no matter what, no matter if they were ridiculous or not. So we definitely did go and at least achieve that. So I'm gonna say at least A- for that, because for the most times we did get the interviewee out. All right, so another thing that we tried to do was bring intactivists together to work together cohesively. I'm gonna give this a C. So we did have the meetings on our Discord weekly. That started turning into a huge time sink. People were just kind of talking about whatever, and it wasn't very productive. So we got rid of that. But we had it for like, I would say 8 months, trying to make work contracts with other intactivists so they are more compelled to work with POTS, so POTS can tell other people about other groups, like a little bit through the news and interviews, etc. We did get Intact Nigeria, Unaltered, and Breaking the Cut to partake in the work contracts. So they did do the work contracts, which was awesome. But your mainstream intactivist groups, we tried messaging them. We provided you guys the evidence. You saw us on the live stream. You saw us on the news spinning the wheel as well. No luck with them. We really tried with the mainstream intactivist people. We did try getting them to work together, but they didn't really want to work with us, but we don't have control over that, right? We are almost at 1,000 subscribers, so that's most likely intactivists coming together, but that doesn't mean intactivists are working together any better per se. I don't know what's going on with intactivists. I don't know if it's like greed or hatred or a deep mistrust of each other, but POTS is trying to combat whatever it is in the intactivist movement that is keeping intactivists fighting against each other. But I will say, a couple $100 work contracts or even straight donations like we tried last year is not working as well as we hoped here at POTS. So I would definitely say A for effort, but this isn't kindergarten, so I'm sticking with a C for the results. All right, so we also wanted to educate the intactivists. I think A+. We have the best intactivist news out there, the most intactivist interviews out there for intactivism. So thank you all who chose to get interviewed on the POTS channel. We definitely appreciate it. Obviously, we couldn't have the most interviews out here for the year without you guys. If you take James Lowen, who is a photographer and a videographer, and all his interviews for the past 4 years, it's not even close to the amount of interviews we put out this year in 2024 with intactivism interviews. Brendan Murata, he's an amazing film director. He got out 24 interviewers this year. We got out 22 different interviewers this year. However, not all of Brendan Murata's were about circumcision and intactivism though. Brendan Murata does, though, have a super cool channel. You should definitely go ahead and check him out. Okay, so we wanted to make POTS free and accessible information for everybody. I give that a B-. Everything is free except the OnlyPans. You have to make a donation to get in. That's where we have our monthly talks. That's where I talk about the future of POTS and any ideas that they may have. You can obviously tell me if you have an idea. You can message me on Discord or email us or on X or Facebook. That's fine. But we don't have like a specific meeting about that anymore. So that's why this video that I'm doing right here, right now, will only talk about the year in review for us and not our future plans, because we're going to be discussing that most likely January 2nd on the OnlyPans channel. So everything else is free though. Everything else is free and accessible. So we're not trying to paywall anything too much. You know, unfortunately, we had to paywall some things because a lot of our initiatives weren't working out too well. All right, another thing that we wanted to do was honest company reviews. I say A+. We did a little over 20 company reviews this year. I would say 3 of them were good news. So 17 plus weren't good news. And I think that's the honesty intactivism is lacking. I even included you, the viewer's point of view, if there was an applicable poll to put in the company review, even if the poll didn't agree with what I found out or what I thought. So yeah, I think that's quite honest to go ahead and put a poll that disagreed with me, right? Now, did we fund intactivism? This was a big goal of us. I give it a B. Now, we at POTS, we made a little over $6,000. We promised 10% of our funding will go to intactivism through work contracts. We gave 13% of our funding to intactivists this year. That's split between Breaking the Cut, Unaltered, and Intact Nigeria. We did try to give an extra $700 away to mainstream intactivists for just doing interviews, but most said no, and one told us maybe later. The goal of POTS is to use 20% of our funding to give to intactivist groups one day. We hope through CareBuzz, the e-commerce program, and hopefully one day YouTube, we can start providing $5,000 a year to intactivist groups through work contracts. This wouldn't be another organization taking your donations and then reallocating them to another intactivist organization like you see with GAUDAF, but mainstream companies funding POTS through intactivists, and then POTS funding intactivists, nonprofits. But granted, we need to raise awareness for sure about the e-commerce program. We have tried so hard on raising that awareness, but for our first year, full year of POTS, with the divided nature of intactivists, I think we did a good job. And obviously, we can only work with intactivists that want to work with us. We want to get 200 intactivists to do the e-commerce program, bare minimum, and so far we got 12. But we unfortunately had to take donations this year, which is horrible. We don't want to do that. I actually know a few major intactivists that are essentially robbing POTS out of getting more supporters by blocking any mention of the name POTS or Prevail of the system on intactivist servers. I will cover that in January, hopefully. But we did launch a new initiative with CareBuzz this year, which might not have given us a whole lot of money, but this is the first year of POTS using it. I think we've used it for maybe 6 months, and it's been working out pretty well. Another goal that we had was providing intactivists a way to contribute to intactivism. A lot of groups don't really have a spot for people who want to help intactivism. I think POTS, we get an A+ for this because we have 7 people who are helping POTS either by spreading the videos or raising awareness about the e-commerce program. We have interviewed 22 people, some of which just wanted their voice heard so they can go ahead and raise awareness. We've also contracted with 3 intactivist groups, all the way to people who've been doing CareBuzz and e-commerce, because some people, they don't want to be interviewed and they don't want to take a more central spot, but it gives a way for people to help. And some people just want to help, giving us order ideas. And that's all great, right? So not hating it. You know what? Thank you for putting out there what you can, right? And I would say once again we probably helped like 30 people do some kind of intactivism, and they've helped us obviously. So thank you guys for that. I think that's been awesome. We also gave ideas on how to do intactivism as well in videos, especially if you go to the playlist Intactivism for Beginners. So that provides more ways to contribute to intactivism. Now, another goal that we had, did we bring fun and enjoyment to the movement? I'm going to give this a B-. I would say that we brought enjoyment, maybe not fun, but definitely made a lot of creative videos in my opinion. And of course, it's hard to make intactivism fun when it's a dumpster fire and we are talking about saving babies. But we had our times in the Discord calls, which were fun, when we were playing golf and engaging with you guys in awesome conversations, or the live streams can be enjoyable too sometimes. I definitely know people like to make fun of POTS sometimes, which is cool on the Discord. You guys do it. It's fine. It's all good. But you know what? We haven't had anyone circumrage or get circumtraumatized by any of our content this year, at least not what I've heard. So that's pretty great. Have we kept up the work? A+, absolutely. We have made over 250 videos this year. Even though we were super busy doing so much personal things, we still gave you guys at least 2 videos a week, and we're pretty reliable for the POTS e-commerce program. So I definitely think that we're keeping up the work. That's great, right? And finally, being a test gauge, I would say A+. I think we did a very good job demonstrating intactivism to you guys. Obviously, that's an opinion though, but we showed that not many people care to actually help intactivism, even these so-called intactivists. There are supposedly hundreds of thousands of people who care about MGM, but only 25 people-ish help POTS in some way, shape, or fashion, like answering polls in the POTS e-commerce program. So if I had to spit out a grade for intactivism currently, I'm going to let you guys go ahead and tell me what you think intactivism deserves as a grade down in the comments actually. Alright guys, well, let me know what you thought of me grading POTS as. Did you think it was fair? Do you think you would change some letter grades around? Let me know down in the comments what you guys think of POTS and how well you think we did this year. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!